headquarters, we see Leticia just observing all that is happening, and some of the employees there making a comment that this is better than any fantasy movie out there, and then they start talking about popcorn, which annoys Leticia that she tells them to stay focused on the task. Her assistant tells her that she should rest a bit, but Leticia insists on staying there as she has to make sure that everything runs smoothly without any bugs. We then learn that the group with the most damage dealt is the Magician's party, with Epicure's party following them pretty closely. Still, Leticia wonders why they don't have more damage dealt, and her assistant says that it's probably because the rest of the members in the party are not fighters. Meanwhile, we see the red-haired magician summoning some pretty powerful spells with fire and burning goblins to a crisp. He then notices Epicure next to him and tells him that he's aware of him being the best in the game, and as long as he doesn't lose against him, he'll be the first place. Rice, thinking that he just has to accept what happened, shouldn't waste any time and use the stone golem to the best of his abilities and knock as many wood golems as he can, which is exactly what he does. But soon after, he gets a notification that his golemization skill has expired, and then the huge golem disappears and our protagonist starts falling from the sky from where the golem's head was. And then as he was dropping from the sky, he thinks of a way he can have a comeback and then uses his Snow White sword, shield and armor combination together with his new horse Gale. Now there's only one golem left, and the red-haired magician says that she can't pass up on that last damage, but our protagonist was already charging at the golem and does his special new move with his dual swords and slashes the last wood golem into pieces. And as the enemy falls down to the ground, the announcement notification appears saying that the last wooden golem got defeated and that the Protect Labertron quest has been completed successfully. It also adds that the remaining goblins are fleeing Laberton. Announcement also says that the management team will share the damage rankings and begin calculating the reward. Everyone is relieved that the event is over, and some of the players were at the end of their HP and couldn't fight for longer if the fight continued. Epicure's team is really happy with how they performed and are even hoping for good rankings, thanks to Rice using his golemization to deal massive amounts of damage just by himself. The announcements of the rankings finally comes, and the team Epicure gets the first place, with the magician being 2 points behind them in second place, which makes the red-haired magician really frustrated. The announcement then says that all of the members from the Epicure team will get a special job item. As Leticia was monitoring the players, she thinks to herself how interesting it is for Rice to leave another significant mark in the game, and that the players with the weakest of occupations took the first place. Her desire to meet him in person grew even more now. My girl is getting thirsty, like every other girl that meets our protagonist so far. As the event ended, we see Leticia logging off from the game. Though she doesn't show it on her face, she's glad that their first event went well without any bugs or lowdowns. And there were 3,000 users that participated in the event, which is a pretty big achievement, she thinks. She still can't stop thinking about our protagonist and even gets an idea to play with him with her second character, but then wonders if he'd accept her friend's request. But her stomach growling reminds her that she didn't eat anything. She's got some options, but she wants to eat something soft, so she orders tofu with kimchi that arrives soon after, and it looks pretty tasty. Hayung, which is Leticia's real name, then thinks to herself that she has to focus on eating food one bite at a time until she eats a bit. But as she starts chewing and forcing herself to think about the texture, the sad memories of her parents start pouring in, which makes her mood deteriorate very quickly. She's desperate to get better, she doesn't want to feel bad eating food anymore and just wants to be able to enjoy her meal. But she can't because the food is associated with her parents and it just makes her sick, with her throat now burning. And then on her TV that shows the game, the voice of someone praising Rice's food attracts her attention. On the TV, Rice is telling his team members that since everyone worked so hard that he felt like making something great to celebrate it. As they continue their conversation about the food, Miss Haeun approaches her TV closer and thinks to herself, how can our protagonist enjoy food that much? She gets inspired watching Rice eating his food, so she tries eating her own food while watching him, but the memories are persistent. She doesn't want to give up, so she keeps struggling, and as soon as the memories start flowing in, she looks at Rice in his blissful state and keeps fighting. Haeun is not willing to quit and can't afford the condition and the trauma that she has to stop her from feeling happiness. In the meantime, as our protagonist is eating his food with meow visibly full lying on his head, we see that red-haired magician approach him, introducing himself to Rice. Rice tells him that he saw him fight and is really impressed with his fighting skills. And as two of them were talking, Epicure says that he needs to go, and that if he comes across any new ingredients, he'll be sure to bring it to Rice. Seekin also says that he needs to go and then logs off the game. As he gets up, he checks his phone and finds that Jiwoo's new song sang by an artist called GK has come out, and he listens to see how it sounds. He's not really happy with it and says that GK's skills are still not at the high level to be able to perform that song, adding that the song was actually stolen from him. And then we see Jiwoo waking up and he wants to check the charts to see how his song is faring, only to learn that a different person is singing his song. We learn that he actually gave the song to be performed by some rookie, which turns out to be Dong-wook. But instead of him, GK is performing it, and it's not to his liking since he thinks that GK doesn't have the skills. As our protagonist is cooking something delicious, we see Jiwoo and Hagyum come to Yangxiang restaurant asking for mac noodles again, as Jiwoo says that he can't stop thinking about them. Miri tells them that they do have it, but that right now for lunch, Aram is making a special dish which is just for the restaurant staff. As Jiwoo and his brother are entertaining themselves by bothering Jaeyoung, Miri goes to Aram and asks him if he's gonna be eating with them. He says that he's making something pretty ambitious and that there's no way that he's missing the lunch. And after a bit, he presents the food, and it's soybean paste sauce with snails, and it looks pretty delicious with everything arranged perfectly on the table, even though I'm not a big fan of snails. I've never tried them, bros, and I never want to try them, okay? So they gather around and start complimenting our protagonist's food. Apparently they say that his food goes really well with white rice and a bit of soy sauce. Being the mukbang expert, Hagyum takes all of the different dishes from the different plates and places it all in his hand and then stuffs his mouth with it. And as the portion he ate was too big, his mouth starts burning, with him saying that it's really spicy. And as the YouTuber was getting told off for being too weak to eat proper spicy food, the song starts playing and Jiwoo asks Miri to change it if possible. Miri is curious, so she asks him if it's because he doesn't like GK. Jiwoo then says that it's not about the hate, but that it's more of a complicated matter where he wrote the song just for fun, and the song actually came out pretty well, and so he decided to give it as a gift to a guy trying to catch a break in the industry. But the song ended up being taken by GK's agency somehow, and he can't apply for a copyright infringement as it was a gift. Listening to this, Aram remembers the conversation he overheard with Dong-wook, where he mentioned that he was tricked and lost his song that was supposed to be his debut. Our protagonist then asks Jiwoo if he can remember the newcomer's name, as he heard a similar story from a guy that goes by the name of Dong-wook. Jiwoo says that he can't really remember, but that he'd be able to recognize his voice. And then sometimes later, we see Jiwoo thinking over all this situation and remembering how he really loved that newcomer's voice, that he was surprised that he's not a professional singer, which is why he decided to give him that song, as he thought he deserved it. But now Jiwoo is pretty frustrated with people using him like that just because he was too occupied and distracted with the game. He's not gonna let that slide like that. And now, back with Haeyoung, she somehow managed to eat a whole plate of food for the first time in a long time without feeling any pain. And then she recollects the last time she ate a full meal without throwing up. It's the memory from when her parents died and she used to go to this restaurant where the owner of it would give her regular meals. She'd tell him her depressing episodes and her suicidal thoughts. And there's something that the owner said that stayed with her to this very day, and it's, let's have a meal later because the food tastes better in company. This is really meaningful to Ha-young, that it might be her source of life, something that keeps her moving forward, or at least trying to. He also told her that she's not alone and they both need to do their best to keep living their life to the fullest. And now we learn that that owner is actually Jang-myung's restaurant owner, Mr. Lin himself. Now we go to the studio set and we see GK relaxing with a drink, and his assistant comes to him with an article published on the entertainment tab where Jiwoo issued a statement saying that until then all of the songs he wrote were just practice. This really makes this arrogant singer GK frustrated, saying that he won't allow Jiwoo to look down on him like that as he smashes the drink he held in his hand. My man's just a little bit over the top, huh? I mean, if all the celebrities are like this, I try doing it, but it's not working for me. I'm a good guy, what can I say? Meanwhile, we see our protagonist meeting up with Dong-wook. RM offers to treat him with some food first, over which they can discuss something that came up. We see that Dong-wook was very close to not even coming as he didn't have any money, but he decided to accept RM's invitation anyway. They order chicken feet, which Dong-wook hasn't had in a long time, and as they are munching on it, our protagonist asks him to tell him more about the story he heard the last time, where his song was stolen from him. And Dong-wook goes into this self-deprecating ramble, saying that he's been working on it for a long time, that he couldn't even do a part-time job, and at the end he couldn't even get it, and it's probably because he's just not worth it and it's not his destiny. And then after a few drinks, Dong-wook explains the situation in detail, saying that he was in the label that then took his song and gave it to GK. And what he's really frustrated about is that the song they stole from him wasn't even performed well, and as he was already too drunk, he then started singing the song, attracting the other customers' attention to him. They think he actually sang it really well, even better than GK, and some of them record him singing, saying that they'll put it on some page. Now we see Jiwoo just finishing his new masterpiece. He says that it's much better than anything he produced for GK, but his biggest question now is who should he give it to, because he can't just randomly give this masterpiece to anybody. He goes through some singers on his Basker page, and after not being happy with his options, he runs into a video saying that a drunk guy killed GK's song. Jiwoo notices RM in the video and quickly plays it to see what's happening. He then gives it a listen and recognizes the voice right away and remembers what RM was telling him just the other day. So he finally found him, and Jiwoo is pretty excited. A day later, we see our protagonist texting Dong-wook, telling him that he wants him to meet someone, and as Dong-wook was heading to the restaurant where he was supposed to meet that person, negative thoughts started overcoming him, where he thinks he won't be able to pay the food in the restaurant, but he still needs to do it as he ate a bunch of times on RM's expense, so it would only be right. And then as he was about to enter the restaurant, someone calls his name, and as he turns, to his shock he sees Jiwoo, who introduces himself to him and says that he's happy to finally meet him. Dong-wook and Jiwoo are now sitting at the restaurant and getting served a lot of good looking seafood. Dong-wook can't believe he's on lunch with the composer Jiwoo just across from him. Jiwoo tells him that this is his first time at this restaurant, but that he heard some good things about it, so he can't wait to try their food. They get all kinds of seafood that Dong-wook never tried, but he's up for tasting all of it. So he then first goes with fermented octopus, and it's amazing. As he chews on it a bit, all of the incredible taste combinations start dancing around his taste buds. It's a perfect balance between spicy and salty, and as he keeps eating the food, he closes his eyes and he immediately gets transported to the ocean, as that's how it feels. Sharing the same feeling about the octopus they are starting their meal with, Jiwoo adds that polek roe adds another layer of flavor. Tasting this incredible and not knowing which to eat first, they both exclaim that the best way to go about it is if they tried both at the same time, which is exactly what they do, and it's absolutely amazing. On top of fresh lettuce, they put a spoonful of rice and top it off with the fermented food and then eat all that in one go. Can it be any better? They can experience the very ocean through this food. Then, interrupting this heavenly sensation, Jiwoo asks Dong-wook if he's friends with Erem, as he was the reason they were able to meet on this day. He then continues saying that he is aware of the situation of Dong-wook's song being stolen right about when he was in the middle of recording it. Dong-wook is surprised that Jiwoo knows about this, but Jiwoo tells him that it's only natural for him to know this since he's the one that made the song in the first place. He also says that he already verified his skills, which is why he gave him the song, because if he didn't have the skills, he wouldn't get the song. And as Dong-wook was just looking at him, Jiwoo then says that he wants to make a new song for him and asks if that's okay with him. This makes Dong-wook speechless as he puts down the chopsticks on the table and gets up from the chair. Seeing him like this, Jiwoo says that it's fine if he takes more time to decide, but Dong-wook swiftly bows down and tells Jiwoo that he's grateful for the opportunity and that he'll definitely take this offer. Even before he could finish his sentence properly, Jiwoo stops him and tells him not to thank him just yet, as the journey they have ahead of them will be very tough, as even pros have issues working with him. He tells him that he'll probably take back his gratitude after 100 different takes. We see that none of the enthusiasm left Dong-wook's face though, as he then says that he doesn't mind singing 100 or even 1,000 times to make this work. Loving the motivation Dong-wook displays, Jiwoo tells him that he's happy with that and that they should leave for the studio right away. Meanwhile, in the game, we see Eliza the alchemist preparing food, or well, she's trying to do it and it didn't come out right. The woman made poison that even Meow feels uncomfortable around. Eliza, seeing how her food came out, is greatly disappointed and is losing her confidence in even being able to make anything resembling edible food. Rice too is surprised as she was following the recipe and it still came out that bad. Being nice as he is, our protagonist decides to keep his shock to himself and gives her some encouragement by saying that he was also bad at the beginning and that since she's an alchemist and if she keeps trying, she'll become better over time at cooking as well. Seeing how awful her food looks, she's not really convinced by it, but Rice reassures her that she can do it and how she was able to successfully make plastic using alchemy, she'll be able to do this as well. And then at that moment, our protagonist gets a call from Macho King that invites him to come to where he is as he found an amazing spot. Rice then asks Eliza if she's willing to go with him, but we see her looking very disappointed with herself, where she says that once she's done with today's cooking practice, she'll log off as she's had enough for today. Our protagonist wishes her good luck with the practice and then takes his leave. Rice then teleports himself to where Macho King is, and Macho King welcomes him and says that this is a quest point where most players end up giving up. Macho King then shows Rice a pretty tall mountain and tells him that he figured out how to get on top, and our protagonist is really flabbergasted by how high it is. Macho King then tells him that he actually wanted to do it himself, but that something came up and so he decided to have Rice instead climb the mountain. Our protagonist is quite happy doing this quest and asks Macho King how does he do it. Macho King then pulls a bean that he says is called Giant's Bean. Rice is pretty curious about it and innocently asks if that's something giants eat. Macho King just laughs at it and tells him that it's not edible, and then he puts the bean in the ground, telling him that you just need to plant it, and then a giant sprout all of a sudden bursts out of the ground into the air. It keeps going up and 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 up as Rice is still trying to realize what's going on. Macho King tells him to quickly grab hold of one of its vines, which he does without even completely understanding what it'll do. The vine he grabbed pulls him up with such a speed that both him and Meow, that was chilling on his shoulders, fight for their lives to stay with the vine. And we see increasingly smaller and smaller Macho King saying his buys from the ground. Rice is just holding on to it as it keeps pulling him really high and high. He panics together with Meow as the speed is unbearable and neither of them knows what's going on. And now we see that the vine is going straight for the top of the mountain, with Macho King at the bottom wishing them a safe trip. As our protagonist gets to the top, he sees that there is a place there, so he concludes that this has to be that sacred dungeon. As soon as he could, he let go of the vine he was holding and starts falling to the ground of this place. Seeing how scared Meow is of the fall, Rice tells Electron to take care of him, where Electron swiftly comes swooping underneath Meow, picking him up. He makes a cheeky comment that Meow is too heavy, which pisses the cat off. They safely land and Rice notices that the place is pretty quiet. He then sees the ancient looking doors with some carvings on them and decides that that's where they are supposed to go. Then a voice from behind tells him that nobody gave him permission to go inside by himself like that. The person continues with a smug smile on his face, saying that this place is the final resting place of their master and that if our protagonist goes around without a guide, he'll probably get lost and die. Rice, seeing this blue-haired little creature, tells him that he understands, but that he's curious as to who he is. The little troll-looking creature then introduces himself as Tom, the guardian of this grave. As our protagonist finished with what he wanted to do for the day, he says bye to Meow and then logs out of the game. Meow is now left alone in the game as her owner just left, and as soon as he leaves, a blue magical looking butterfly lands on Meow's nose and then flies off. This makes our cat really curious, so Meow starts following it. It chases it through the streets and through the green fields and through the forest, and it finally lands on a rock. Meow, in his cat hunter mode, with its eyes all big, gets ready for the attack and then launches itself forward at the butterfly, sending one of its attacks called Nyang Nyang Punch. The butterfly manages to escape, but the rock on which it landed gets blown to pieces. As Meow was now looking at the butterfly flying beyond his reach, someone from the back of the cat asks if Meow might be that cat that travels with a chef. It's the stuffed animals that Meow encountered in Marina's cave, Bear and Rabbit. The rabbit says that it thinks that Meow has grown since they last saw him. Our protagonist's cat then starts recollecting the memories from Marina's cave and thinking how they used to be much bigger than now. They tell Meow that they've gotten quite smaller now that they've lost the witch's power. The bear picks up a flower and says that since they used to be enemies before, it wants to give the flower as a token of apology. The bear extends its arm to give the flower to Meow, but Meow just bites on it to their shock. Now, seeing the cat disgusted with the taste, they ask Meow why would it eat a random flower and then conclude that it's probably because it's hungry. The thoughtful rabbit says that since he thinks that Meow came from far away, that it probably didn't eat for an entire day. He also wonders where our protagonist went and why didn't he leave any food to Meow. He then says that since they know each other, they'll get some food for the cat, but they first need to figure out what our cat really likes. They come across some apples and the bear wants to try to pick the apple for Meow, but it can't reach it, so the rabbit comes in and jumps really high, knocking a bunch of the apples down, with one direct hitting our protagonist's pet. As it wasn't intended, both the bear and the rabbit feel sorry seeing this and ask Meow if it's alright, as it has an apple-sized bump on its head. And as Meow gets up, it sees Korean melons on the ground and then happily starts playing with it. They ask Meow if it wants to eat it and then go on to cut them in halves. The rabbit notes that if Meow didn't see it, they wouldn't have found it, so they are pretty pleased with how things turned out. The rabbit then was about to say that if he knew that the only way they could find the melons is by hitting the cat, he wouldn't mind it, but then stops himself as Meow already noticed what he was saying. Rabbit then says that the melons look really yummy and then goes on to try one of them. The rabbit gets really mesmerized with the taste as it's unexpectedly juicy and crunchy at the same time. He thinks to himself that he only had one taste and it already tastes so good. Stopping his enjoyment, Meow angrily bites on the rabbit's head. The rabbit starts apologizing for eating the melon by himself and says that they can eat them together. Sometimes later, we see that they've become a pretty good team for picking different types of fruit. Meow uses the bear's stomach as a spring to jump even higher to get the grapes from difficult reaching spots. And after some time, we see Meow's crew already packed with bags full of fruits. In their picking adventures, they run into all kinds of troubles, including a buffed up mole that they barely escape. But then they come across a tree hanging off of a cliff and decide to pick some fruits off of it, even if they think it's dangerous. Meow is pretty confident that he can do it, so he goes on that tree, and as he approaches the fruit on it, he sees two guys at the bottom of the cliff talking about trying out their new powers. They say that they can try it since there's nobody there, so the other guy charges up some power and punches the cliff so hard that it shakes the entire cliff and the tree on which Meow is. Then the two guys just walk away from the spot, with one of them saying that the attack was nothing special as he thought it could break mountains. Meow barely managed to stay on the tree, and the stuffed toys say that it should quickly come back to safety. And as Meow starts walking slowly towards them, something strange starts happening, and Meow starts feeling that the environment around it is changing a bit. And then a red notification pops up saying that the terrain collision bug has occurred and that the characters quoting the map are being adjusted. And Meow is really scared as the poor fella has no clue what's going on with him, so he screams in desperation, "Oh no, cute little Meow!" And now, somewhere deep in the forest, we see a pink fairy talking to Electron, but the Electron here is not in the same form as he is when he is with our protagonist. The pink fairy is curious as to why Electron comes back to the forest so frequently these days. Laid-back Electron is not sure what's wrong with him coming back to his own home. The pink fairy tells him that she thought he had to be in the moral world since he made a contact with a human. Electron, now yawning, tells her that his master is currently not there, which is why he returned briefly. She then reprimandingly tells him that at least the other fairies that formed a contract like his are at least clean and do other things until their masters come back, unlike him that is just laying around doing nothing. Is she talking to me? He's now annoyed and tells her that he worked hard when he was with his master and that he should be able to take some rest while he's here. And then all of a sudden someone says electricity. The pink fairy notices someone calling from the bottom of the tree and then tells Electron that they are probably calling for him. And at the bottom of the tree there are stuffed toys, Rabbit and Bear, and they ask if Electron is a guy that goes around with the chef. They both look terribly worried as they continue saying that there's some trouble and that Chef's cat is in grave danger right now. Electron looks down from the tree, now even more irritated, and asks them how did they even manage to find this place. They say that they are made out of magic so that they can naturally come to the spirit world and they need him to help them before it's too late. The pink fairy, making fun of Electron, tells him that there's no time for rest and that he better go help his friends. Electron looks like he doesn't want to be bothered, but then just after a short contemplation, he says that there indeed is no time to rest, and then by lifting his hands up, he turns into that adorable ball of electricity. And being cute like that, he angrily says for the stuffed toys to bring them to the cat. As Electron was following them to their destination, they explain to him that they used to be villains, but that they are not anymore since they are free from the witch's spell. However, Electron is still suspicious of them and tells them that he'll keep an eye on them, so they better not engage in any shady business. And then in the distance, he sees Meow, and to his utter shock, Meow looks so old that he looks like he lived 1,000 years. It turns out that because of severe hardship Meow has faced, he suddenly grew old. Electron tries to approach Meow, but he can't because there's a barrier that doesn't let him. He asks the stuffed toys what this barrier is and why can't he go through, but Bear and Rabbit are also clueless about it. Electron then shares his observation with them, saying that he doesn't feel any presence of magic or that this even is a wall. He gives it a bit of contemplation and then proclaims in joy how there's nothing he can do about it. Meow is angry with this and is ferociously hitting the wall in protestation. The rabbit says that in that case they didn't even have to bring him here as he's useless. But carefree Electron tells them there's a point in bringing him there as he knows someone who can help them with this issue. And then sometimes later we see that Electron went to Fertile that was hanging out with Spider Queen to ask him for help, and Fertile, after hearing Electron's case, is pretty happy with helping them save Rice's pet, as Rice is his savior and the one who found his pickaxe. Spider Queen then adds, but in a very scary tone that terrifies the stuffed toys as they think it's a monster, that Rice is the guardian who protected them from the lizard, which is why they can't refuse helping a friend of their guardian. As they bring him there and explain to him what happened, Fertile quickly picks up on it and then comes up with a possible reason why that happened, as the light going through his hand gives him a clue. He says that it's complicated, so that they should pay close attention to what he's saying. He says that there's a set limit to the objects and living things this world recognizes based on topography, and because the heavy damage was inflicted below, the debris range and Cat's range collided. Everyone is confused as they don't understand what this means, and the Spider Queen continues saying that it basically means that the cat became part of the branch. Electron is annoyed with this and asks if that means that Meow has to live as a branch from now on. Fertile says that that's not necessarily the case and that there's a way. If they could damage the surroundings again, causing the branch and rocks to fall, they might solve the issue. But he adds that there's another problem with this, as the cat also might fall. The Queen Spider says that she'll take care of that part. Fertile thanks the Queen Spider and then says that in that case he can start with the damage. He then goes to the poor Meow and tells him that he'll save him and that he has nothing to worry about. Electron seems really worried that this might go wrong, as he really doesn't want Meow to get hurt or even worse, die. Fertile's pickaxe then starts glowing and he swings it with all his might and then slams it down to the ground, causing a huge rupture in the ground, flinging both the tree and Meow back. And as Meow is falling down with rocks flying all around it, the Spider Queen uses her special ability, Soul Web, to safely catch the cat and protect it from falling to its death. But Meow in that moment sees the vision of our protagonist, thanking it for bringing him something, and then bounces off of the web again, risking falling down to the ground. And then as it sees the bag of fruits it was picking together with the stuffed toys, it goes for it to at least soften its fall. And to the poor Meow's surprise that was certain it would die, it gets saved by Electron, who swooped in right in time to prevent Meow from falling any further with its fluffy body. The others observing are really happy and congratulate Electron for saving the cat. Meow is especially happy and grateful as the poor fella is crying out of happiness. Electron actually cares and he says that it's a relief that Meow is safe. He then adds that they should go back as it's almost time for their master to come back. And a bit later we see that our protagonist is back in the game, completely unaware of what happened. He embraces Meow and thanks him for bringing him hard-earned fruits. Meow is just happy to see its owner as he snuggles close to Rice's face. Our protagonist is also happy seeing Meow and then says that he'll make him something delicious as a reward for bringing him fruits. We're back at the top of the place. The conversation between the troll-looking creature and Rice continues. Our protagonist first introduces himself, saying that his name is Rice and that his occupation is a chef. Troll is a bit confused with the word rice, so he asks our protagonist to explain it in more detail, but Rice just tells him that that's his name. Troll also wonders how did a chef manage to climb all the way up to the giant's plains, and then he says something that sounds pretty random to Rice. He says that if Rice is looking for a master's grave, that he should just give up. He continues, getting all serious about it, saying that among all these maze-like paths, there's only one true path that leads to the real grave, and if he goes down the wrong one, then he's sure to die, as all of the other paths are filled with dangers. Troll, now looking all smug, tells our protagonist that if he wants to know the right path, he should just butter him up. Rice is thinking that all of the little ones in the game he encountered just keep crossing the line. They always ask him to do something like making food for them so that they can return his favor. And he finds it hella annoying, and then meow sounds himself in his usual cat way, and as Rice turns around to see what it's doing, he sees Meow munching on some random plant on the ground, and he seems to be enjoying whatever he's eating there. Rice gets a bit upset with Meow, telling him that he can't just eat anything he randomly finds, as it could be dangerous. And even before he could finish his sentence, his ability of perception turns on, and it tells him that the thing the Meow is eating is actually ramen noodles. Our protagonist is really excited to see some ramen noodles, so he quickly picks it up and tries it to see how it tastes raw like that, as he couldn't taste noodles like this in a long time, and it just tastes like uncooked ramen noodles, as expected. So he wonders if he'll be able to make some ramen noodles, and he also wonders if Meow can maybe next find ramen soup, because then he wouldn't have to make anything. After observing our protagonist for a bit, the troll guy comes in and tells Rice that he should be winning him over, as he's the one that can take him to the place they wanna be at. Rice, all excited for finding ramen on such a random place like this, tells him that he didn't forget about winning him over, and that he'll be making something that he's sure to love. Maybe he'll cook Meow up. I heard Meow is delicious. So then Rice starts working on the meal by first putting in the crown daisy leaves and then adding red pepper, and after that diagonally chopped onions. Already looks amazingly refreshing, but then he puts in sausages and then rice cakes, and now the mix already looks like it's getting a consistent shape. So now all he needs to do is, when all this comes to boil, he puts in the ramen noodles, leave it to cook for a bit, and then that's it. We get delicious looking, spicy and warm prodigy. I don't know how to pronounce another name, of course they're coming up with these crazy Korean food dish names. Anyways, the troll is not excited about it. He says that Rice is supposed to make him happy, but all he does is make a stew, and he really hates stews. Our protagonist, feeling a bit uncomfortable with the troll telling him this, then tells the troll that even though he dislikes stews, he should try his, as he worked hard making it. Troll responds by saying that he already hates how it looks, so why should he try it at all? And then when he sees ramen noodles inside the stew, he detests it even more. We see that Meow isn't too amused by his comments on his master's food. Our protagonist tells him that the ramen noodles cooked in prodigy actually taste a lot better than what he's imagining in his head. Rice then scoops up a bit of the stew noodle to try changing his mind about it by showing how rich it looks. He then offers him and tells him to quickly eat it before it cools, but the troll is still not convinced and doesn't want to try it. We then see that Meow isn't too picky with what he eats, as he already ate it all in a blink of an eye. Rice, seeing how happy Meow is with the noodles, asks it if it wants another bowl of it. Our protagonist then picks a bowl for himself, as he thinks it's time for him to try it himself. And as soon as he brings the bowl close to himself, he gets hit by a wonderful spicy aroma coming from the steam of the soup. He really missed this smell. So he first gets a spoonful of prodigy and then takes some rice in the same spoon so that the rice soaks up those juices. So he then takes that spoon and gives it a try. The texture of the meat inside is incredible, and the chewy grains of rice soaked in the stew are just amazing. And then he thinks to himself that even with everything tasting so nice in this stew, the one thing that can't be missed are the ramen noodles that are cooked with it. The ramen engulfed in prodigy soup is extremely tasty. Troll, seeing him enjoy the food like that, also decides to give it a try, but as soon as he tries it, he starts wondering why the noodles are so long. Our protagonist, still absent from this world due to the sheer enjoyment of the meal he's eaten, tells him in a dreamy way that he should just cut them if they are too long and then eat them. The troll thinks it's bothersome to cut it and then starts complaining about the soup being too hot. Rice, in a disarming way, tells him that he should just blow on it and then it should be fine for eating. And just as Rice was about to finish up his food and have his last few bites of heavenly bliss, he gets interrupted with a troll yelling really hard, saying that he burned his tongue drinking the soup. And then he says really dramatically that he's afraid for his tongue and if he even will be able to talk after. Our protagonist tells him that if he just waits for a bit, it'll get better, and besides he's already talking, so he should be okay. But the guy just continues whining, sounding like my friends when we played Fortnite together. I mean when we used to play Fortnite together. Oh my god, he killed it because he got so lucky. You get the point. Meow is really not amused by this picky crybaby. It's annoying as hell. And then sometimes later, we see an empty bowl and surprisingly, the troll managed to eat all of it and he's really happy with how it came out. He compliments our chef by telling him that he is pretty skilled. Rice is just happy that it went well, as it didn't seem like that with all the whining and complaining. Troll then tells him that as he promised, for making him happy, he will show Rice the way. Do you know the way? Do you remember this meme? Not be here for you to revive all the dead memes, bro. Anyways, he then heads towards the doors and the doors open. The troll then tells him, now again looking all smug, that they should come in and that he'll show them the way to the master. Meanwhile, in the recording studio, we see Dong-wook passionately singing and working on the song together with Ji-woo. He's really giving it his best to make this work. Ji-woo gives him some instructions as to how to make it sound even better, and he tells him to make the end part a bit longer and also to adjust the ad-libbed parts. And as the recording session goes on, we see that it's intense as the instructions Ji-woo gives to Dong-wook become more detailed and delivered in a more strict way. Ji-woo doesn't seem to be very happy with the takes they get, so he keeps asking Dong-wook to do it again and again and again and again and again and again, but Dong-wook, despite it being so difficult, is able to keep up and come closer and closer to Ji-woon's perfectionist's taste. And a bit later, we see that they're having a break over lunch and Ji-woo recognizes the hard work Dong-wook has put in. He asks him how his first recording felt, and Dong-wook, all excited just to have this amazing opportunity, tells him that it was hard but also fun at the same time. This comes as a surprise to Ji-woo, so he then asks if it wasn't too difficult working with him, as that's what people always mention. Dong-wook, munching on his food, joyfully says that it wasn't and that it's a dream for him to be able to work with Ji-woo. Dong-wook, looking at the food he's eating, starts thinking to himself if he was ever this happy. He thinks that Bunjo Pang, the Ji-woo bought, is really yummy, and with this type of food he could record 100 times more without any problems. And Ji-woo is fondly thinking to himself that it's been a while since he came across someone that really enjoys music this much. Back in the studio, we see the two of our musicians working on it again, and what Dong-wook thought was just an exaggeration turned out to be the real deal. He really will have to record 100 takes, as that's the minimum for a perfectionist such as Ji-woo, and he recognizes that it's really exhausting, but as much as he's tired, he's also just happy for this long-awaited opportunity. And sometimes later, after the first day of recording session was finished, we see Dong-wook taking a nap in the waiting room as he was too tired. Ji-woo wakes him up and tells him that he really did a great job for the day, as he was able to follow his instructions without getting too tired, and it's actually better than he imagined. Dong-wook says reassuringly that he can't get tired just yet, as he has to work hard to completely finish the recording. Ji-woo then sneaks in news that Dong-wook is his new exclusive partner and that his partner's mentality has to be strong. Dong-wook is really taken aback by this and questions Ji-woo on it, so Ji-woo asks if he maybe doesn't want to be his exclusive partner, to what Dong-wook excitedly says that it would be his honor to work with him as his partner. Dong-wook thinks to himself that he wouldn't be able to even dream about being a singer anymore, but thanks to the game, a chance was given to him and he better not waste it. And now we go back to our protagonist climbing the stairs that go in a circular motion following the troll looking guy. As they go up, Rice is looking around as the palace looks rather interesting, like some old medieval castle. Seeing him this curious, Troll tells him to be careful and not to touch the walls and just to follow right behind him. Our protagonist thinks to himself that this looks like a maze and that if he came there by himself, he'd definitely get lost. But then seeing Meow beside him, he thinks that he actually might have been okay as he's got Meow to show him the way. And after some time walking around, they finally arrive in front of the big doors decorated with red colors and with two stone gargoyles holding up fire that's lighting up the space. It looks pretty menacing. The troll then says that that's the master's resting place, and the big doors start opening slowly with a giant knight showing up in front of the doors, blocking the way. Rice asks the troll if they can enter the place, and the troll in oversized clothes, now pretty solemn with his choice of words, tells him that he can as long as he shows respect to the dead inside. So our protagonist starts walking up to the knight until he arrives right in front of him, and then all of a sudden there's a voice seemingly coming from the unmoving knight, and the voice sounds cold and harsh. It says that finally someone came to his place of rest. The knight's armor shakes up a bit as the voice comes through, and then as bluish light starts flashing from the depths of the knight's helmet, it says that as the one who found him, Rice should face the will of his flesh, and then a blast comes from the knight's direction so that our protagonist had to cover his face to protect himself from the intense blast. The voice then says in the same harsh and cold voice that it's unfortunate that he doesn't even remember who he was when he was alive, and he continues saying that all that he vaguely remembers is the fact that he doesn't belong there. Finally, as the blast settles down and Rice is able to peek through his hands, he sees a well-dressed skeleton guy levitating above the ground with cold air all around him. It's definitely a scene to behold. Our protagonist, now fully absorbing this sight, then asks the fancy skeleton if he does not belong there, what is he doing there in the first place? The levitating skeleton tells him that it's because of those who murdered him, they broke his spirit and sealed him away in several places. Rice then asks him if he knows who actually sealed him, and the skeleton tells him that he doesn't know, which is why he had waited for someone to find him. He continues saying that meeting our protagonist causes some of the chains that bound him to break, which means that pieces of his sealed spirit could then be found. Troll is listening to all of this, and he hangs his head down as if he shares the troubles with the skeleton. And then bringing up his harsh, cold, ghostly voice, the skeleton thanks Rice for finding him, and as soon as he says that, a huge blast of light comes from the direction of the skeleton, with him gradually blurring into the background. And then as the light disappears, the skeleton just falls down to the ground, and the window notification comes up saying that the hidden rare quest, Will of an Unidentified Soul, is complete and he gets a skill as a reward. Our protagonist sees this and says that he hopes the skeleton guy is able to find his other parts. Troll, looking all thoughtful about the situation, tells Rice that a portion of the master's soul has found peace. He then continues, now even more lost in his thoughts, saying that after losing his memories, he came there after wandering all around, and it was his master who told him to wait there for fate, as not just any person will do this quest. It has to be someone with their own will. And then the troll starts glowing as he says that his memories are also returning to him. Both our protagonist and his pet Meow are flabbergasted seeing Troll's transformation. Now looking like a well-dressed boy with different colored eyes, he tells him that his real name is Pepesh, and that if it's okay with our protagonist, he'd like to travel with him. The notification pops out saying that if Rice helps him grow into an adult, he'll get Pepe's loyalty, but if he fails, his penalty will be a decrease of random stats for -100. Rice thinks to himself that the penalty is a bit too high, but that he can't leave a child by itself here in this rather scary cemetery. So our protagonist then agrees for Pepesh to come with him as long as he doesn't complain about the food when he's with him. Pepesh reluctantly agrees with this condition and thanks our protagonist. Now it makes sense why he was such a crybaby eating Rice's cooking. He was just an actual baby. Coming to an agreement, Rice then asks him if he knows the way out of this creepy place, and Pepesh tells him just to follow him. And sometimes later, we see them outside, and our protagonist immediately makes a remark about how it's so refreshing outside. Standing on the edge of a cliff, Rice is reminded of where they are and thinks how they need to figure out a way down to the bottom. Rice, looking down, then thinks to himself how if someone just looks at it from the bottom, it would look like a regular cliff, but if he uses the new skill that he acquired by completing this quest, he is able to see much more. The new skill, called exploration, enables him to see a hidden path to the cliff and from the cliff. He can now see some little floating islands and figures that they can use them to get down to the bottom. Pepesh then drops in saying if he's supposed to call our protagonist as a master, and Rice, uncomfortable with this, tells him that he can just address him by his name. He then starts giving his ideas on how they could go down, but to his surprise, Rice just swiftly jumps off of a cliff and starts floating down using his cloak, and Meow is flying on Electron. Our protagonist then casually turns his head towards Pepesh and tells him to get down using the floating pieces of land. Pepesh is still in a loss for words as he looks at Rice floating like that. He then says that he should have told him that he can fly, and then Pepesh also jumps off of a cliff and two bat-like wings come out from each side and he starts flying. And Rice is absolutely shocked seeing this and thinks to himself that he can't help but to think that it feels like he adopted a little devil. In the meantime, at the Jangmyeong restaurant, we see some youngsters drinking themselves wild. There are two guys and two girls, and they are making fun of the fact that they had too much to drink. And one of them drops a glass on the floor, which breaks, and we learn that it wasn't the first time that they broke the glass this night. They even have the nerve to ask for another glass. Miri's friend Sun Young is getting really irritated at this bunch because as she thinks to herself that it's almost closing time and they shouldn't be drinking that much anyway. Miri tells her that she should already be off work and that she can do the rest once the last customers leave. Miri adds that it's pretty late and that she doesn't know when they'll be able to close. The drunk lady, overhearing this, takes it as her trying to tell them to go as it's closing time, and she gets angry. Miri tries to calm the situation but without success as the girl gets even more riled up, telling Miri that they're paying for everything and that she shouldn't be trying to chase their customers away like that. The girl then slams the glass on the table and walks up to Miri and Sangyeong. Sangyeong apologizes for making them feel bad, but the lady will have none of the excuses as she's already made her mind up that she'll make a scene. She then tells them that they are making their customers look like bad guys. Sangyeong still tries to calm the upset customers, but the girl then directs her attention to quiet Miri and asks her why she's staring at her like they did something wrong. She points her finger at Miri and even starts poking her. This annoys Miri, so she slaps the girl's hand away from her so that she stops doing that, telling her not to be like that. The drunk girl gets really angry this time, and so she tells Miri that she's mannerless towards her customers and shoves her really hard. The situation gets a bit more dramatic, but then someone in the back slams their fist down really hard so that it draws everyone's attention, and the person that slammed their fist then says in a really condemning voice that they should stop and that they should be embarrassed. They are making problems instead of enjoying their food. The drunk lady then tells the guy that the old man should be minding his own business. The guy gets offended by this and tells them that in that case, if they call him an old man, he'll talk to them like an old man. The guy gets up and throws a menacing look at the drunk lady, telling her that she should immediately apologize to the worker she pushed if she wants to make it back home. And just seeing this guy, we can tell he doesn't mean it as a joke. The mysterious man repeats once again that these youngsters should apologize to Miri, but they're not taking him seriously as one of them says that he's probably drunk. The girl in hat then approaches the man, stoops to him and threateningly tells him to keep eating and not to get involved in other people's business. The man is unfazed by these threats and aggressive approach from the youngsters though. But Sangyung and Miri look pretty scared and uncomfortable with the situation, so Sangyung suggests they call the police. The problematic customers still go on their rant, saying that they were angry enough for being treated like rude customers, and now on top of that, they have this old man man butting in too. The mysterious guy then calmly tells the drunk girl that they are not only bothering the workers at the restaurant, but everyone else too, and that their lack of manners are more than obvious. Hearing this, one of the drunk guys gets up from the table, picks up a bottle and rushes towards the mysterious guy to hit him with it. But the guy swiftly grabs the drunkard's hand with the bottle and then does a karate chop to his neck, immediately knocking him down. The drunk lady, seeing this, is astonished and gets down to her friend to see if he's okay, and her drunk friend seems to have issues breathing, as the chop was really precise yet powerful that it quickly incapacitated the guy. Sang-young then tells Miri that they might not actually need cops with this guy being there with them, and Miri agrees. The mysterious guy then starts menacingly walking towards the drunk customers, telling them that they should have just left it at talking, and that once they used the bottle to attack him, it wouldn't end well for them without any consequences. And we can see that these drunk customers are not feeling all that confident anymore. The big mysterious guy then tells them if they have anything left to say it now. But they're not uttering anything for a moment, as they pick up their friend from the floor, and then one of them says that they should just leave the place. And as they are leaving, they say that they won't be coming back to the restaurant ever again. Before they left, Miri tells them that they didn't pay, but she doesn't get any response back from them. The mysterious guy tells Miri that he'll pay for them. Miri is a bit hesitant about it and tells him that he already helped enough. As the drunk customer left, we see Sang-young and Miri thanking the big guy, and he apologizes for getting carried away and disturbing them. The boss, Lim, comes in saying that he just saw some customers leaving the restaurant and how they looked pretty angry, and so he's curious if something happened while he was away. Miri excitedly tells him that those people were completely obnoxious, but that this big gentleman helped them with the rude customers. Mr. Lim is a bit worried that it must have been difficult for them as he wasn't there. Mr. Lim then goes on to thank the big gentleman for helping his staff, and as soon as he sees the mysterious guy's face, some memories start rushing to his head, where he remembers this guy involved in some fights, managing to beat everyone with just one punch. The famous one fist is what they used to call him before. Is this a reference to One Punch Man? But Mr. Lim, still curiously staring at the mysterious guy, thinks to himself that this can't be that guy, and it's probably that they just look alike. The big guy then bows down and says that it's nice to meet the owner of the restaurant. The guy then pulls a business card and tells Mr. Lim that he's got some fond memories of this neighborhood, and because those customers started causing trouble, he had to get involved. He also adds that he thinks this is fate, and so hands in the card to the boss, saying that if they ever end up needing help, just to call him. Mr. Lim thinks that they won't need that type of help, but Sang-young tells him that since he already helped them, it would be a good idea to accept his business card. Miri agrees, saying that you can never know when they might need his help. The big guy then starts walking out of the restaurant, and he tells them that it's fated they'll meet again. And in the meantime, back in the game, we see our protagonist together with the Pepesh kid. As they are walking together to the village, Pepesh asks if they're going to live there, and Rice tells him that they won't. He also says that if there's nothing there for them in the village, they'll just move on to another place. And then they run into Eliza, who is really excited to see our protagonist. She says that the village is really bustling now. She tells him that it's thanks to him, but Rice is not sure how he helped since he doesn't remember doing any quests here. And then that NPC that Eliza was trying to help comes out thanking Rice. He says that it's all thanks to our protagonist that he was able to become a chef. So then Rice thinks that he must have succeeded with the menu he taught him. And then our protagonist gets a window notification saying that chef only hidden quest is still open, where he needs to make that NPC Starlin #1 in sales in the region. As a reward, he can get an advanced cooking tools package. Our protagonist is really happy with this, as the reward is really great. Rice then starts pestering Starling about how he's gonna teach him a new menu, and then sometimes later we see they are already working on that menu, making maggioli with acorn jelly salad and meat pajon. I'm saying it like it's a French word. I don't know the pronunciations of English names, let alone Korean names. I'm sorry. Sue me, but just don't call the cliffhanger police on me. Anyways, it looks really juicy and tasty, and once made, Starling is drooling all over it as the smell is irresistible. Rice tells him that now this should sell even better, but they need to come up with a good way to sell the new menu so that it goes out faster. And then he remembers that Eliza made some plastic containers with her alchemy and that they can use those. Eliza is really proud of making these, and so she's showing them off to Rice. Our protagonist then asks her if she can make these plastic containers in bulk, to which she agrees, saying that after all, her alchemy stats are over 300. And then we see shocked Starling overwhelmed with the orders coming in as they use their plastic containers for the takeouts, and so he quickly becomes the best-selling seller in that region. Soon after, our protagonist gets a new notification telling him that he completed that quest and now he gets the cooking tool package. Rice is proud of his achievement, thinking how it was smart to come up with the takeouts, as that's the best way in terms of having a short-term sales growth. Eliza notices Pepesh just standing there and observing all of this, so she decides to ask to see who he is. After Pepesh introduces himself, Eliza realizes that it's an NPC. Pepesh gets slightly upset as Eliza didn't introduce herself, so he suggests that she is Rice's attendant. She grabs him by his cheeks as she thinks he's cute and tells him that she's not an attendant but an alchemist. Seeing this interaction, Rice remembers that he's supposed to help Pepesh on his quest to grow, and he better focus on that since the quest's penalty is pretty significant. Our protagonist then tells Eliza and Pepesh to stop bickering and tells them that they need to celebrate their safe return, so they should organize a party. And naturally, he starts cooking as he does. But this time he's using the tools he got as a reward from the quest he just completed. So he first puts some olive oil in the new pan and then spreads it out. He's making some steaks and the steaks look really good quality. Shiny when being cooked with the frying sound that just brings your appetite to the maximum, bros. I'm getting fat just by making these recaps. I have to eat food while making them. Anyways, as this is a bit thicker steak, the sides should also be properly fried as to seal the juices inside. And we see that the steaks are really coming up nicely, and by each passing second it looks more and more delicious. The sound of grilling it is just too mouth-watering. And then seeing that the steaks are grilled well, Rice takes the meat off of the heat with little meow staring at it as if he saw the best thing in his life. Our protagonist then puts some butter and rosemary in with the meat juices and then puts the meat back in the pan for a bit more of grilling. He then takes the sauce made from butter and rosemary and slowly pours it over the meat, as in this way it'll absorb the meat. And for the final touch, he just needs to completely remove the meat off of the heat and let it rest for several minutes while making garnish. Pepesh is really impatient, so he asks if the food is already done, and Rice tells him to wait a little bit longer. And then several moments later, Rice serves them the food, telling them to enjoy their meal. And the steaks look like the best